I'm pleased to say the Chief Constable, Matt Baggott, is with me in the studio. Chief Constable, welcome to the programme. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
We've seen a situation in Northern Ireland for 11 weeks now where major roads have been repeatedly blocked by protesters. Why aren't roads being cleared so that ordinary citizens can go about their lawful business?
Well, we take an approach that is entirely consistent with our responsibilities, which is first and foremost the protection of life and public safety. And on some nights in the last 2 months, there's been over 80 protests, thousands of people on the streets, and this isn't a problem you can simply arrest away. But what we do, and we have been warning about, is the consequences of people's actions. And as you've seen already, I have a team of over 70 detectives working away at the evidence. 190 people have been arrested to date. We've identified just under another 200 who we'll be dealing with in the next few weeks. And I have a team of Met detectives working through all the evidence and CCTV, looking at the footage of serious violence, and there'll be more arrests following.
But the problem is that because there is a process to be gone through, it looks to an awful lot of people, obviously, as if the law can be broken with impunity.
Well, we're being utterly consistent in our approach this year, as we were last summer, as we were the summer before. Our responsibilities to the Policing Board and under devolution is first and foremost Article 2 of the Human Rights Act, and that's the protection of life. And our approach, I must say, in the last 2 months has led to not a single serious injury, and that is an achievement by itself. And if we had been overzealous, if we tried to arrest people off the streets in a very crude way, not only would we not comply with that duty, but I think there could have been a much more serious problem which we would still be facing.
What about the cost to ordinary individuals who want to go about their daily lives without disruption? I mean, the estimated cost to business by mid-January was £15 million, according to the CBI. We had 127 officers injured up to late January. We had a policing bill in early February of £15 million. Those are big consequences for the economy, big consequences for people's lives. They look to you for leadership. They want you to deal with the problem. And frankly, they think that you're pussyfooting around.
Well, that's not true. And many people I deal with, including a visit to Derry last night with hundreds of people there, fully understand, endorse the police approach. We're in a position that we don't want to be in, and we are dealing with it, I think, in a very thorough and a very measured way. I come back to that point, Mark. Our job is to protect life and make difficult decisions, but do it in a measured way. Not a single person has been seriously injured. Yes, there have been, unfortunately, consequences to this, which are economic, but they are not consequences of the police making. There will be, however, more arrests, there will be more charges, and there will be hundreds of people brought before the courts. And that is utterly consistent with our approach we've taken the last few years.
Right, well, you say you're in a position that you don't want to be in. Is that because you feel let down by the Parades Commission? Is that what you're suggesting?
I don't think it's a question of blaming the Parades Commission for this. We do have legislation that was made in 1998 at a time of direct rule. I'm not sure that the penalties are a sufficient deterrent for what is in effect a summary-only offence of participating or organising an unnotified parade. I do think there are some very strong evidential thresholds which we have to reach in terms of creating a case for the Public Prosecution Service to take before the courts, and there is some conflict and some debate around Article 11, which is the freedom for expression. And these are complicated matters, and I think it's time for that legislation to be reviewed and brought up to date. But the consequences we're facing at the moment are because many, many people have gone to the streets to protest. A lot of that has been peaceful protest. Let me be clear about that. But we have seen, unfortunately, outbreaks of serious disorder which have required significant police resources to deal with.
And we've now got a situation where the Orange Order, and we've just heard the Reverend Mervyn Gibson saying that that organisation is looking at how these parades have been policed and has formed the view that it might be worth considering the possibility this coming marching season of not actually applying to hold the parades in the first place, just going ahead and doing them, because actually nothing's going to happen.
Let me make 2 points. In a responsible democracy, civic leaders, church leaders, political leaders, they respect the rule of law. And the Parades Commission was set up for the issues of public safety. And if you don't have a regulatory body, even if you don't agree with the way it works, then you have a distinct possibility of people losing their lives. And it's a time for calm reflection on some of these comments. And the second point I'd make is there is no inevitability about disorder in the summer. None at all. People make choices as to whether they're going to be responsible and deal with marches in a way that doesn't create conflict at the interface areas. That is a choice that people choose to make. And there's no inevitability about this at all.
Well, there's no inevitability that there will be unrest or violence, but it does sound as if the Orange Order might want to try to go ahead with parades that don't have certain limits put upon them by the Parades Commission.
Well,
so what's your message to Mervyn Gibson tonight?
With some calm reflection, the Orange Order will think about the consequences. Because I said before, 190 people have been arrested to date, 200 more have been identified, and we will be knocking on doors. We will be knocking on doors for people that have been involved in unnotified complaints and the obstructions and the serious rioting.
So your message then to Mervyn Gibson and to others in the leadership of the Orange Order tonight is this, is it, if I'm paraphrasing you correctly, if they go down that road, you would treat those demonstrations, those protests, parades in exactly the same way that you've treated the parades over the past 11 weeks, and you would seek to gather evidence and to bring those individuals taking part in unnotified parades before the law?
We will first of all put the protection of life first. If we can enforce the law at the time, we certainly will. And people that choose to take part in illegal acts will have to face the consequences. But let me say again, I think this is a time for quiet reflection. And I do look to our civic leaders, to our political leaders, and particularly our church leaders, to make the statements that are required for the law to be respected.
Right, we've had a statement in just a couple of minutes ago from the Parades Commission. It says, this is in response to Mervyn Gibson's comments on the programme tonight, the law is very clear. It's an offence to organise or participate in a parade that has not been notified through the appropriate form to the police. And it goes on, where a parade is not so notified and is therefore breaking the law, it's a matter for the police to deal with under the various options open to them that could include stopping the parade or gathering evidence for potential prosecution. You agree with that?
Well, we have a number of options available to us, of course we do. But again, I come back to that point, when you have hundreds, if not thousands of people on the streets, you have to deal with things in a pragmatic and sensible way. That's our responsibilities under the Human Rights Act.
What do you do then, Chief Constable, on Saturday coming, where those responsible for organising the weekly parade from East Belfast to the City Hall have said that they want to take that parade to your headquarters, police headquarters in Knock? A lot of people are concerned. There's dual carriageway there, there are issues of public safety, there are issues of disruption where people might want to move between, for example, South and East Belfast and might not be able to do so on a Saturday afternoon.
Well, we will, if it's a peaceful protest, we will facilitate that. We will give very clear advice around what the law is. We will advise people how to preserve their safety, and we will make sure that people's lives are protected. Well, and if they break the law, then we will deal with it.
Why not send out a message on this programme today that people should not take part in an unnotified parade on Saturday afternoon, and if they do so, they will face the full rigours of the law, rather than saying you will facilitate a peaceful protest?
Mark, what you said there was a protest, and a protest can be peaceful. Part of living in a democracy is a right for people to protest.
What about the parade from East Belfast to Knock?
If there is a parade takes place, the first thing we'll do is to work to make sure people are safe. And we will enforce the law at the time if we can, and we will enforce it later, as I've already given that assurance. I was speaking about this in December and January, saying to people, although we put the protection of life first, there will be consequences. There are hundreds of people appearing before the courts already. There will be more hundreds of people appearing before the courts, and there will be consequences.
Okay.
That is utterly consistent with our duties and our responsibilities. I'm held accountable for compliance with the Human Rights Act. I'm held accountable for the protection of life and property, and I'm held accountable for the enforcement of the law. Our approach has been thorough, thoughtful, measured and responsible. And I hope we'll have some of the more cynical commentators start to acknowledge that what the PSNI has done here has been a magnificent job of holding the line in very difficult and very complicated circumstances.
Well, a lot of them say that what you've done is you've facilitated the demonstrators and the protesters more than anything else, because 11 weeks on, not very much has changed, frankly. The protests continue. There's another one planned for this Saturday at your front door.
There has been significant heat come out of the protests. If you go back to December and January, the intensity of the rioting in certain parts of Northern Ireland, which we contained and dealt with, were very, very severe. We've given the opportunity for sensible voices to be heard, and I hope that this Saturday will see a break from the illegal parades to a place where protest is peaceful and manageable. But I come back to that point. There are and there will be consequences for people who have chosen to break the law.
I can't let you go, Chief Constable, without asking you about the James Fenton case, which dominated the news agenda here in Northern Ireland today. The Police Ombudsman delivered a stinging criticism of how the police handled the search for Mr Fenton. Viewers will recall he went missing at the start of July 2010, but it was 10 weeks before his body was found, fewer than 40 metres away in the grounds of the Ulster Hospital. How embarrassed were you by that criticism from the Police Ombudsman today?
Well, we've been very clear in apologising to Mr Fenton's family and I'm not going to defend inactions of police which weren't professional and good enough. And I'm sorry again to the family that they've been through that trauma. We deal with over 7,000 missing persons every year. The vast majority we deal with very successfully. And I'm saddened in this case we weren't able to find Mr. Fenton's body. And we'll be having those conversations with the family and apologising to again them personally.
And a lot of people are surprised and I think frustrated that we don't know what disciplinary action was taken against the 12 officers against whom sanctions were taken. Why don't we know exactly how they were reprimanded?
There are legal reasons behind that, which I'm not at liberty to discuss. I am actually the appellate authority for the PSNI, so officers have an opportunity to appeal to me. So I'm not going to go there in relation to that.
You don't need to name the individuals. You could say the levels of sanctions that were taken against the individual officers. That would be much more transparent.
Well, there are reasons why, but you can be assured that the actions and the disciplinary measures will be proportionate to the issues that have been raised by the Ombudsman.
OK, and the Ombudsman told the BBC today he's reviewing the policy of not revealing details of disciplinary sanctions imposed on police officers in future. What's your reaction to that?
I'm very happy to work with the Ombudsman on that. If that's an issue of public confidence, then we'll have some conversations about that and see if we can resolve it.
OK.